The Dominion's Grand War Council convened in the heart of the Virax homeworld, the chamber bathed in eerie crimson light. Warlords, strategists, and high-ranking officials stood before the great Admiral Zalvader, a battle-scarred veteran of 1,000 wars. He loomed over the gathering, his reptilian scales gleaming in the artificial glow. His eyes narrowed as his intelligence officer, Corvash, presented the latest report. "We have encountered an anomaly," Corvash said hesitantly. "An anomaly?" Zalvader scoffed. "Speak plainly, Corvash. I tire of riddles." The officer hesitated for only a moment before continuing. "It is about the species known as humans. A minor race from a backwater planet called Earth. They were classified as insignificant by the Dominion decades ago." Zalvader let out a low growl of impatience. "Then why are we discussing them now?" "Because, Admiral, they are no longer insignificant." The chamber fell silent. Corvash activated a holographic display, revealing detailed reports of recent battles. Images of destroyed Dominion vessels flashed across the screen, each accompanied by data, fleet losses, unexplained sabotage, and terrifyingly effective ambushes. The humans have been expanding rapidly. Their technology was primitive only a century ago, but they have adapted at an unprecedented rate. They fight with a level of tenacity we have never encountered. Zalvader leaned forward. "You expect me to believe that some primitive species, a fledgling race barely out of their own solar system, poses a threat to the Dominion?" Corvash's claws tapped on the display. "One of our scout fleets was sent to observe their military progress. They were wiped out in less than an hour." Murmurs spread through the chamber. Zalvader's eyes flicked to the next piece of footage, a Dominion battleship torn asunder, its wreckage drifting lifelessly in the void. He clenched his jaw. The Dominion had conquered countless worlds, shattered empires, and crushed rebellions before they could take root. Yet now, an unknown force had wiped out an entire fleet? This is a fluke," he muttered. Corvash's voice was grim. "We sent another fleet. It vanished without a trace." A heavy silence hung in the air. For the first time in a millennium, the Dominion's War Council felt something they had never experienced before. A sliver of doubt. And deep within Zalvader's chest, something darker stirred. A feeling he had not known since his earliest days on the battlefield. A feeling called fear. Admiral Zalvader stood at the head of the council once more, his mind racing as the full weight of the situation pressed down upon him. He was not used to being questioned, let alone losing battles. The Dominion had always been untouchable, but now, a small human species had managed to make a mockery of his fleet. The very thought irked him. "You say another fleet was lost?" Zalvader's voice was ice-cold. Corvash nodded. "Yes, Admiral. Our second wave was sent to investigate the first fleet's disappearance. The humans' resistance was more sophisticated than we anticipated. Their stealth technology is unlike anything we've ever seen. We don't even know how they found our fleet, let alone managed to destroy it." Zalvader's tail twitched in irritation, the sound of his sharp claws scraping across the floor reverberating in the tense silence. His mind raced. The Dominion had relied on overwhelming firepower, sheer numbers, and devastating weaponry to crush enemies for eons. How could a species this young, with so little resources, pose such a challenge? He was beginning to question whether the intelligence was incomplete, or if the humans truly were capable of striking down even the mightiest fleets. "Where did we last detect them?" Zalvader asked, his voice laced with impatience. Corvash tapped a series of controls, bringing up the location of the last known position of the vanished fleet on a holographic map. A single red dot blinked on the far edge of human space, near the Sol system. The humans' homeworld was within reach, but it had been carefully shielded by advanced jamming technology. The Dominion had tried to probe it with scanners, but every attempt was blocked. It was as if Earth itself were cloaked in some kind of supernatural veil. "What is this?" Zalvader muttered under his breath, more to himself than anyone else. "We've been unable to gather any solid intel, but we believe there's a hidden strength within their world, Corvash continued. We've heard rumors. Humans are experts in subterfuge, sabotage, and precision strikes. Their ships are small, yet faster and more maneuverable than anything we've encountered. Zalvader's eyes narrowed. What do you suggest, Corvash? We need to be cautious, Admiral. The loss of 2 fleets, it's unprecedented. It suggests that these humans are far more dangerous than we've been led to believe. If we don't move carefully, we could lose more. Zalvader's gaze turned to the map once more. The red dot representing Earth seemed to mock him, gleaming with an almost unsettling quiet. For the first time in his career, he was unsure of the next step. Send a smaller, specialized fleet, Zalvader commanded. I want this to be quick and decisive. But, make sure we don't underestimate them. I want every possible ship at our disposal, no more surprises. The council members nodded in agreement, their unease still palpable in the air. As the meeting adjourned, Zalvader remained standing, his mind racing through possibilities. The Virax Dominion had never faced an enemy that made them question their superiority. But there was something else, something deeper than strategy or tactics at play here. Zalvader wasn't sure what it was yet, but he could feel it. The humans, in some way, had already won. They had planted a seed of doubt within him. They had shown him that the Dominion, his mighty empire, was not invincible. That alone made them dangerous. The Virax Dominion fleet moved swiftly through the vastness of space, its warships cutting through the stars like an unstoppable juggernaut. On board the flagship, the Tyrannies, Admiral Zalvader paced impatiently. The humans had to be eliminated before their growing strength became a galaxy-wide threat. Admiral, a communications officer called, pulling him from his thoughts. We've arrived in the outer rim of the Sol system. The human colonies are within range. Zalvader's sharp gaze turned toward the view screen, where Earth's pale blue dot flickered in the distance. His clawed hand tightened around the armrest of his chair as he looked at the planetary grid, which displayed thousands of human colonies. Earth had always been a symbol of insignificance in the galaxy, a primitive backwater, little more than an afterthought. Now, it was a beacon of potential disaster. Deploy the fleet, Zalvader ordered, his voice cold. I want to see this human resistance crushed in an instant. The battle commenced with ferocity as Dominion ships entered the inner atmosphere of the human colonies. Weapons systems came online, and the initial strikes were devastating. The first wave of Dominion forces targeted Earth's key spaceports and military installations with precision, intending to break the human spirit before they could mount a counterattack. But as the first blasts tore through the atmosphere, something unexpected happened. A series of human fighter crafts emerged from hidden bases, far more agile and deadly than any Dominion ship of comparable size. Their weapons struck with pinpoint accuracy, disabling Dominion cruisers with a single well-placed shot. The humans fought not with overwhelming numbers, but with devastating tactics, hitting fast, retreating swiftly, and hitting again where the Dominion least expected. Zalvader watched, his jaw tight. The humans were everywhere, stealth ships darting in and out of asteroids, laying traps for the Dominion fleet. Their guerrilla tactics were infuriating, making it impossible to engage them head-on. His fleet, which had expected to steamroll these colonies, was being steadily pushed back. We're losing ships, Admiral, one of his officers cried, panic rising in her voice. Their ships are equipped with some form of adaptive cloaking. We can't track them. A cold fire lit in Zalvader's eyes. It was clear the humans had prepared for this moment, they had not been caught off guard. They had anticipated the Dominion's moves, and they had struck hard. Even more infuriating was the realization that their technology was nowhere near as advanced as the Virax Dominion's. Instead, it was a combination of innovation, ingenuity, and raw survival instinct. And it was working. We need reinforcements, Zalvader growled, but there was something different in his tone. The once unshakable confidence had begun to crack. The Dominion's superiority was being tested in ways no one had expected. Then, in the heart of the conflict, the true nature of the human strategy became clear. Zalvator watched in disbelief as a fleet of human ships appeared from behind a nearby moon. But these ships weren't designed for open battle, they were built for sabotage. Small, fast vessels, each with one clear objective: to cripple the Dominion's larger warships. As the battle raged on, these ships swarmed Dominion cruisers, attaching explosive devices to their hulls, then detaching at high speed before the explosions went off. The human ships, with their astonishing speed and maneuverability, moved too quickly for the Dominion to catch. The result was catastrophic. Zalvator's eyes widened as his own flagship, the Tyrannies, was struck by several of these small ships. The explosion rocked the ship to its core, sending it into a violent spin. His officers scrambled to regain control, but the damage was done. Another ship lost to the cunning and unexpected tactics of humanity. Admiral Zalvator bellowed orders, but his frustration was evident. The humans weren't just fighting, they were making a statement. They were showing the galaxy that the Dominion wasn't the unassailable empire they had believed themselves to be. In the midst of chaos, a message from Earth's leadership came through, crackling over the comms. "This is Commander Elena Moretti of the United Earth Defense Forces. We've engaged your forces on our terms, and we will continue to do so until you leave our system." Zalvator's anger flared. "You think you can defeat the Dominion? You are nothing but an insignificant speck in the grand scheme of the galaxy." The reply came coldly, but with unmistakable resolve. "We are more than that, Admiral. And we won't stop until you learn that lesson the hard way." The communication cut off, but the words lingered in Zalvator's mind. The humans were confident, too confident for a species they had long considered inferior. He had underestimated them, but now, his entire fleet was at risk of being outmaneuvered, outclassed, and driven from the very system they had once considered theirs to dominate. The Dominion was beginning to feel something it hadn't in over 1,000 years: fear. Admiral Zalvator stood at the command console of the Tyrannies, watching as his fleet continued to struggle against the relentless human assault. The destruction around him was incomprehensible. Entire warships were drifting lifelessly through space, their once pristine hulls now nothing more than smoldering wreckage. His victory was slipping through his claws like sand, and there was nothing he could do to stop it. The human forces were everywhere, smaller, faster ships darting in and out of the chaos, striking with deadly accuracy before vanishing into the darkness. It was as though they had mastered the art of warfare without ever needing to show their true hand. His fleet, once an unstoppable force, now looked vulnerable and disorganized. "Admiral, we're losing another cruiser," a communications officer shouted. Zalvator clenched his teeth, fighting the surge of frustration that threatened to overwhelm him. This wasn't supposed to be happening. The Dominion had fought wars with other species, superior species, and crushed them all. Yet, here he was, on the verge of losing to a group of primates that couldn't even comprehend the full scale of the technology they were facing. "Where is the support fleet?" Zalvator demanded. "They're still en route, Admiral," the officer replied, though the fear in their voice was unmistakable. "But at this rate, we won't be able to hold on much longer." The situation was growing dire. The once proud Dominion fleet was being picked apart by human tactics so foreign, so precise, that Zalvator couldn't even comprehend how they were pulling it off. The humans didn't have the firepower to match the Dominion directly, yet their ability to exploit weaknesses and outmaneuver the enemy had turned the tide of the war. It was as if they were playing a game of chess, while the Dominion was stuck in a game of checkers. "Signal all ships to fall back," Zalvator barked. "We cannot afford to lose any more ships." But it was too late. A blinding light flared across the battlefield as the Tyrannies took another direct hit from one of the human sabotage ships. The explosion rattled the flagship to its core, sending shockwaves through its hull. Zalvator's vision blurred momentarily as the force of the blast threw him to the floor. His officers scrambled to their feet, their voices frantic as alarms blared throughout the command deck. "Admiral, shields are failing," a voice called. "Damage report," Zalvator demanded, trying to regain his composure. "We've lost power to the forward engines, Admiral," another officer shouted. "The Tyrannies is dead in space. We can't retreat. For the first time in his long and illustrious career, Zalvator felt the unmistakable sensation of helplessness. The Tyrannes, the symbol of the Dominion's might, was now drifting, vulnerable to the relentless barrage of human attacks. Prepare to abandon ship, Zalvator ordered, though a part of him hesitated. He had never expected to be in this position, never thought the Dominion would be driven to this point. He had always believed that no species could stand against the Vierax. But now, before his very eyes, his entire empire was on the brink of collapse. As the crew scrambled to follow orders, Zalvator lingered by the viewport, watching as the remains of his fleet were torn apart by human forces. The sight of it, the once mighty warships crumbling under the relentless assault, gnawed at his pride. He had led the Dominion to victory after victory, and now, he was leading them into defeat. It was then that he understood. This was not just a loss on the battlefield. It was the loss of everything the Dominion had stood for. Humanity had not just struck a blow to their military power, they had struck a blow to the very heart of the Vierax Dominion. The humans had forced them to confront the one thing the Dominion had never faced, their own vulnerability. Suddenly, an urgent transmission crackled over the comms. "This is Commander Elena Moretti of the United Earth Defense Forces." The voice was calm but filled with an unmistakable authority. "Admiral Zalvator, I'd advise you to surrender. Your forces are finished, and you have no hope of winning this war. The galaxy is about to witness the rise of humanity." Zalvator's claws dug into the console as the transmission ended. His tail lashed behind him in fury. The humans had done the unthinkable. They had destroyed his fleet, shattered his pride, and now, they were daring to speak to him as if they had already won. No. This was not over. Not yet. Zalvator's mind raced. The Dominion would not fall today. He would not allow it. The defeat would be avenged. But something inside him had shifted, something he could not ignore. He now realized that this war was not just about the humans' victory. It was about their sheer will to survive. The Dominion had underestimated them, and now, the entire empire would have to reckon with the consequences. And Zalvator knew this was only the beginning. The Tyrannes hung in space, now a mere shell of its former glory. Its systems were failing, and the once imposing flagship had become little more than a drifting hulk. Admiral Zalvator stood amidst the chaos in the command center, his mind swirling with anger and disbelief. His empire, the Vierax Dominion, had never faced such humiliation. He had never been so close to defeat. "We've lost contact with the rest of the fleet," an officer reported. "The humans have disabled the communication relays. We can't reach the backup forces." Zalvator's eyes narrowed, his teeth grinding with frustration. This was not just a tactical loss. It was personal. The humans had toyed with his empire, outsmarted them at every turn. And now they were at the cusp of taking everything. But Zalvator wasn't ready to accept that. "Re-establish communications," he barked. "We are not done yet." It took hours, but finally, the Tyrannes' backup systems flickered back to life. A transmission crackled through the speakers, harsh and static-filled at first. Zalvator's heart raced as he gripped the armrest of his chair. It was a garbled voice, but one he recognized immediately. "Admiral Zalvator," the voice said, steady and resolute. "This is General Haziel, from the Vierax reinforcements. We've arrived in the Sol system and are prepared to engage the human forces." Zalvator's tail flicked in relief. At last, reinforcements had arrived. "We are under attack," Zalvator growled. "But I want the humans wiped out. No mercy. Bring the full might of the Dominion to bear. And make them regret the day they ever challenged us." "Understood, Admiral." "We will crush them," General Haziel replied before the transmission cut off. The reinforcements were the largest fleet the Dominion had ever assembled, a formidable force capable of overwhelming any enemy, no matter how well prepared. For the first time in days, Zalvator felt the surge of confidence returning to his chest. They would show the humans their place in the galaxy. Meanwhile, on Earth, Commander Elena Moretti stood in the war room, eyes fixed on the holographic display of the Dominion fleet's movements. The small human fleet, battered and scarred from the previous encounters, was regrouping. The time for a counterattack was fast approaching, and she knew that this could be humanity's one chance to strike a decisive blow. "Elena, the Dominion has dispatched reinforcements," a voice behind her said. It was Major John Ramirez, her second-in-command. His face was grim, his expression filled with concern. "The fleet they've sent is enormous. We won't be able to hold them off for long." Elena's gaze remained steady. She had expected the Dominion to respond with overwhelming force. After all, they had no other option. The Virax had been at the top of the galaxy for eons, defeat was not in their nature. But humanity had never been the kind of species to give up, especially when their survival was on the line. "We can't outgun them, but we can outthink them," Elena replied, her voice filled with determination. "It's time to put everything we've learned to use. We've fought them before, and we know their weaknesses. We can't take them head-on, but we can make them fight on our terms." The room was silent as the strategy began to take shape. Elena's mind worked quickly, assessing every possible tactic, every advantage humanity could leverage. They had a significant edge in maneuverability and speed, as well as an intimate knowledge of the terrain in which the battle would unfold. "Mobilize all our ships," Elena ordered, her voice unyielding. "We will create chaos in their ranks. We're going to hit them where it hurts." Back aboard the Tyrannies, Zalvator stood at the head of the command center once more. The reinforcements had arrived. The enormous Virax fleet moved into position, their weapons ready. The final showdown was upon them. Zalvator's gaze swept across the battle grid, his claws twitching in anticipation. His fleet was poised for destruction. The humans had nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. This time, there would be no escape. This time, they would crush them completely. But as he looked at the stars, a sudden thought entered his mind. Could it be? Was humanity truly capable of defeating the Dominion? His thoughts were interrupted as the communication officer spoke again, urgently. "Admiral, we've detected multiple ships on a collision course. It's the humans. They're coming for us, all at once." Zalvator's eyes widened. The humans weren't retreating, they were charging straight into the heart of the Dominion fleet. With a loud, guttural roar, he slammed his fist down onto the console. "All ships, prepare for battle." The war for the galaxy had reached its boiling point. The Dominion's ultimate strength was about to clash with humanity's unwavering will to survive. Zalvator could no longer deny it, this was no longer just a battle for supremacy. This was a war that would decide the future of the galaxy. The battle in the Sol system raged on, the space around Earth becoming a swirling vortex of destruction. The Dominion fleet, now reinforced and massive, moved into position, confident that they would finally wipe out the human threat once and for all. The Tyrannies, the flagship that had once been a symbol of the Dominion's unstoppable might, loomed at the heart of the fleet, ready to deliver the final blow. But the humans were not retreating. Far from it. Commander Elena Moretti stood at the heart of Earth's flagship, the Avenger, her mind sharp and her resolve unshakable. She knew that humanity's survival depended on this battle, and that every decision she made would have consequences that echoed throughout the galaxy. The Dominion, the mightiest empire in the galaxy, was now her enemy. But she had no intention of backing down. "Admiral Zalvator is expecting us to flee, to fall back," Elena said, her voice steady, yet filled with determination. "But we're not going anywhere. We fight. And we fight smart." Major Ramirez, standing beside her, nodded. "We've been outnumbered before, Elena. But we've always found a way. This time will be no different." Elena's gaze locked onto the holographic map of the battlefield. The Dominion's fleet was closing in, its monstrous size and firepower a terrifying sight. But there was something else, something Zalvator had overlooked. The human fleet wasn't just a collection of ships, it was a finely tuned instrument, each vessel serving a specific purpose in the larger plan. "Activate the decoy satellites," Elena ordered. "Let's see how they react." The Dominion fleet continued its advance, each ship firing on all cylinders as they approached Earth's defenses. They had no idea what was coming. The decoy satellites deployed by the humans were small, seemingly insignificant objects scattered across the battlefield. To the Dominion, they appeared to be nothing more than erratic blips on their scanners. But when the Dominion ships moved to intercept, the decoys activated their advanced scrambling technologies, creating false readings and causing the Dominion to waste precious resources targeting the wrong ships. Zalvader's voice crackled through the comms. "What is this? Their ships are vanishing. We're wasting ammunition on phantom targets." In reality, the humans were moving their true fleet into position. With the Dominion distracted, the smaller, faster human ships slipped through the chaos and locked onto the weakest points in the Virax armada. This was the human advantage: speed, maneuverability, and unpredictability. The Dominion had never faced an enemy that could blend those three traits so seamlessly. "Target their engines and power cores," Elena ordered. "We need to cripple their command ships first." Zalvader's fury grew with every passing minute. His fleet was being torn apart by an enemy that refused to fight conventionally. Every time he thought he had them cornered, the humans would slip away, only to strike again with devastating force. "Admiral," one of his officers called, their voice shaking. "We've detected multiple breaches in the hull of the Tyrannies. The sabotage ships, human ships, are all over our flagship." Zalvader's eyes flashed with disbelief. This wasn't happening. Not to the Tyrannies. Not to him. He grabbed the communicator and barked into it. "Send reinforcements to the Tyrannies now. We need to hold our position." But even as he spoke, the truth became undeniable. The Dominion had underestimated humanity, again. The humans weren't just skilled at fighting. They were experts at exploiting every weakness, every opportunity. And now, the Dominion fleet was suffering for it. Elena stood firm as the Avenger shuddered under enemy fire. The Dominion had switched tactics, now targeting the humans directly with overwhelming force. But Elena's resolve was unwavering. "Hold steady," she said, her voice calm despite the chaos around her. "We've crippled their command fleet, but we need to finish the job." Her strategy had been bold, but it had worked. The Dominion was reeling, unable to respond quickly enough to the human assault. The moment of weakness had arrived, and now it was time to exploit it. "Engage the final phase," Elena ordered. "Prepare for a direct strike on the Tyrannies. All ships, move to coordinates 245 to 9. The Avenger led the charge, its engines roaring as it plunged into the heart of the Dominion fleet. Behind it, a swarm of human vessels followed, unleashing a storm of missiles, energy beams, and precise sabotage techniques. The Dominion was caught off guard, unable to react fast enough to stop the onslaught. Zalvader watched helplessly as the Tyrannies was surrounded, its shields weakening under the constant barrage of attacks. The ship that had once been the pride of the Dominion was now on the brink of destruction. His heart raced as he realized the true scale of his failure. The final blow came from a small human vessel, one of many that had infiltrated the Dominion's ranks. With a targeted strike on the Tyrannies' central power core, the flagship erupted in a massive explosion. The shockwave rippled across the battlefield, knocking out several Dominion ships in its wake. Zalvader stood frozen, staring in disbelief at the carnage. The humans had done it. They had not only survived, they had won. "Report!" Zalvader shouted, but the officer's voice was thick with fear. "Admiral, the Tyrannies is destroyed. The fleet is in disarray. We cannot continue the fight." Zalvader's breath came in ragged gasps. He had failed. And in doing so, he had ensured that the Dominion's grip on the galaxy was slipping, forever. Back on Earth, Elena Moretti stood on the bridge of the Avenger, watching as the Dominion fleet began to retreat. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The galaxy had witnessed humanity's rise from a once weak species to a formidable force capable of defying the mightiest empire in the universe. We did it, Major Ramirez said, his voice filled with awe. Elena nodded, her expression grim. This is just the beginning. The Dominion will regroup, and other empires will take notice. But we've sent a message. Humanity will not be underestimated again. As the humans prepared for whatever came next, the galaxy stood on the precipice of a new era, an era where humanity's will to survive and fight would shape the future. The dust from the final battle had barely settled in the Sol system when the full implications of humanity's victory began to take shape. The once untouchable Virax Dominion had suffered a catastrophic loss, its fleet shattered, its flagship destroyed. But the war was far from over. The battle for the galaxy had just begun, and humanity was now at the center of it all. Commander Elena Moretti stood at the bridge of the Avenger, the hum of the ship's engines providing a steady rhythm to the chaos unfolding beyond the viewing windows. Behind her, the crew worked feverishly to assess the damage and prepare for the next phase of their operations. But Elena's gaze remained fixed on the stars ahead, the vastness of space both a reminder of their victory and a challenge that lay ahead. Commander, Major Ramirez said, stepping up beside her. We've received communications from several systems. The Dominion is reeling, but we can expect retaliation soon. Some of the smaller empires in the galaxy are already seeking alliances with us. They see us as the new power. Elena nodded, though she knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Humanity had made powerful enemies, and many of the galaxy's established empires had long viewed Earth as insignificant, an upstart planet with no place in the greater galactic order. But now, the tables had turned. We're not just fighting for Earth anymore, Elena said, her voice resolute. We're fighting for the future of every world that believes in freedom, in standing against tyranny. Meanwhile, light years away, the leaders of the galaxy's other empires watched in stunned silence as reports flooded in. The once impervious Dominion had been humbled by a small species from an insignificant corner of the galaxy. No one had expected humanity to be capable of such a feat, not even the Virax themselves. And now, the ripple effect was beginning. In the massive halls of the Galactic Council, a representative from the Zralan Empire, a technologically advanced race known for their cunning diplomacy, spoke, their voice filled with incredulity. The Dominion has been defeated. By humans. The very species we dismissed as primitive. What does this mean for the balance of power? The room was silent, tension hanging in the air. It means, a voice interrupted, calm and calculating, that we can no longer afford to ignore Earth. Their resolve has proven to be their greatest strength. The Virax underestimated them, and now the galaxy must reckon with humanity's potential. The Zralan representative shifted uncomfortably in their seat. And what of the Virax? Do we simply allow them to lick their wounds and return to their conquest? The voice responded, colder than before. We must decide. Do we move against them and seize the power vacuum, or do we attempt diplomacy with the humans and learn from them? One thing is certain, Earth will no longer be a backwater planet. Back on Earth, Elena prepared for the next steps in humanity's rise. The victory at Sol had sent shockwaves across the galaxy, but there were still many challenges ahead. New alliances needed to be forged, and old enemies would not let humanity's rise go unchallenged. But Elena had no illusions about what humanity was capable of. As Earth's forces regrouped and began to explore the depths of space, they were met with a new reality. The galaxy was vast, and there were many forces at play. Yet humanity had proven something far more important than sheer firepower or technological might. They had proven the strength of their resolve, the power of their unity, and their willingness to fight for their place in the universe. Commander, we're receiving a transmission from the Zralan Empire, an officer called from across the room. Elena's brow furrowed, but she nodded. Put it through, she said. A hologram materialized before her, displaying a tall, angular figure with dark, shimmering skin, a representative of the Zralan. Their voice was smooth, though it carried an undertone of caution. Commander Moretti, the Zralan diplomat said. We have watched your victory with interest. The Dominion's downfall has left a significant gap in the galaxy's power structure. We seek to discuss terms of cooperation. Earth has proven itself a force to be reckoned with. We would like to offer our alliance. Elena studied the figure carefully, sensing the cautious optimism in their tone. The Zralan were a race known for their political savvy, and they rarely offered alliances without carefully considering their own gain. Cooperation? Elena echoed, her voice steady. And what do you seek in return for this alliance? The Zralan diplomat inclined their head. We seek peace, stability, and the opportunity to learn from your strategies. You have shown us that even the greatest of empires can fall. Together, we can shape the galaxy to ensure that it is no longer ruled by tyrants. We can protect the weak, and we can expand our influence together. Elena's mind raced. The Zralan were no friends of the Dominion, and their offer came with the promise of something greater, a galaxy that was no longer ruled by a few powerful empires, but one where humanity's values of freedom and self-determination could flourish. But alliances, especially with races like the Zralan, were never simple. We will consider your offer, Elena said finally. But know this, humanity's values come first. We will not be bought or manipulated. The Zralan diplomat nodded with respect. Understood, Commander. We look forward to our future together. As the Zralan ambassador's transmission ended, Elena turned toward the bridge's windows, watching the stars twinkle in the distance. The galaxy was vast, and humanity's place within it was no longer in question. But this was only the beginning. Humanity had proven itself in battle and diplomacy. The galaxy would now have to reckon with Earth's power and its unyielding spirit. No longer just a fledgling species, humanity had risen to become a force that could not be ignored. The dawn of a new era had begun, and humanity's future in the galaxy was now theirs to shape.